The late afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on the lost wagon train as Beatrice Brennan gripped the reins of the lead wagon, her 7-month pregnant belly pressing against the rough wooden seat, and felt the weight of 37 souls depending on her to find a way through the maze of rocky canyons that stretched endlessly before them in the Montana wilderness. It was August 1882. And what should have been a straightforward journey from Fort Benton to Helena had turned into a nightmare 3 days ago when their guide, a weather-beaten trapper named Morrison, had succumbed to a rattlesnake bite. The man had died in agony while the sun climbed high, and they had buried him beneath a cairn of stones with the mountains watching silently. Now Beatrice, a widow of 8 months whose husband had died in a mining accident back in Colorado, found herself at the front of a desperate caravan with no clear path forward and supplies running dangerously low. The other families looked to her because she was the only one who had studied Morrison's maps before he died, the only one who had pressed him with questions about landmarks and water sources when the others had been content to follow blindly. She was 23 years old, carrying her dead husband's child, and somehow had become the reluctant leader of 9 families who had pooled their resources for this journey to a new life in Helena, where gold and opportunity supposedly waited. "Miss Beatrice," called out Samuel Richardson from the second wagon, his weathered face creased with worry. "We have maybe 2 more days of water if we ration carefully. The children are already complaining of thirst." She turned in her seat, feeling the baby kick hard against her ribs as if in protest of their situation. "I know, Samuel. According to Morrison's notes, there should be a pass through these mountains about 5 miles northeast. Once we get through, there should be a creek on the other side that feeds down from the snowmelt." "Should be," muttered Margaret Richardson, Samuel's wife, loud enough for Beatrice to hear. "We have been following should be for 3 days now." Beatrice felt the sting of the words but pushed it aside. Doubt was a luxury none of them could afford. She studied the terrain ahead, looking for the distinctive 3-peaked formation that Morrison had sketched on his map. The mountains all looked the same to her tired eyes, but she refused to let despair take root. "We keep moving," she announced, her voice carrying back through the line of wagons. "We will make another 2 miles before we stop for the night. Save your energy and your water." The wagons creaked forward, wheels groaning over the rocky ground. Beatrice guided her 2 oxen carefully, avoiding the larger stones that could break an axle. Behind her came 8 more wagons, each carrying families with their entire lives packed into wooden boxes, all of them banking on the promise of Helena and a fresh start. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Beatrice finally spotted what she had been searching for. 3 distinct peaks rose against the darkening sky, their shapes matching the rough sketch on Morrison's map. Relief flooded through her, and she felt tears prick at her eyes. "There," she called out, pointing. "That is our marker. The pass should be just beyond that ridge." A cheer went up from some of the younger children in the wagons behind her, and even the adults seemed to sit a little straighter. Beatrice allowed herself a small smile, one hand moving to rest on her swollen belly. "You hear that, little one? We might just make it after all." They made camp that night in the shadow of the 3 peaks, circling the wagons as was their custom. The families gathered around a small fire, rationing out the evening meal of salt pork and hardtack. Beatrice sat slightly apart from the others, studying Morrison's map by the firelight, tracing the route he had marked with her finger. "You should eat something," said Martha Davis, a kind-faced woman in her 40s who had taken it upon herself to mother Beatrice ever since Morrison's death. She held out a tin plate with a slightly larger portion than the others. "I cannot take more than my share," Beatrice protested. "You are eating for two," Martha said firmly, "and that baby needs strength whether you think you deserve extra or not." Beatrice accepted the plate with gratitude, her stomach growling despite her worries. "Do you think I am leading us wrong, Martha? Be honest with me." Martha settled down beside her with a soft grunt, her own plate balanced on her knee. "I think you are doing the best anyone could do in an impossible situation. Morrison was supposed to guide us, and he is dead. You could have fallen apart, but instead you stepped up. That takes courage, Beatrice." "More courage than most people have." "Courage or foolishness," Beatrice murmured, taking a small bite of the salt pork. "What if I lead everyone astray? What if we run out of water before we find that creek?" "Then we will face it together," Martha said simply. "But I do not think that will happen." "I have faith in you, even if you do not have faith in yourself." That night, Beatrice lay in her wagon bed, listening to the sounds of the camp settling down for sleep. Her baby moved restlessly inside her, and she placed both hands on her belly, whispering soft words of reassurance. She thought of her husband, Thomas, and how excited he had been when they learned she was pregnant. He had died 3 weeks later, crushed in a mine collapse, and Beatrice had been left alone with nothing but debts and a baby on the way. The journey to Helena had seemed like her only option, a chance to start over in a place where no one knew her as the pitiful widow woman. She had sold everything Thomas had not already gambled away and bought a wagon and supplies, joining up with the Richardson party for safety in numbers. She had never imagined she would end up responsible for all of them. The next morning dawned clear and hot. They broke camp quickly, everyone eager to find the pass Beatrice had promised. She took her position at the lead wagon again, her body aching from the constant jostling, her back protesting the long hours on the hard wooden seat. But she set her jaw and urged the oxen forward, following the landmarks on Morrison's map. The terrain grew rougher as they approached the mountains, and the wagons had to move in single file through narrow defiles between towering rock walls. Beatrice felt her anxiety rising with each passing hour. What if she had read the map wrong? What if there was no pass, or what if they could not get the wagons through? It was early afternoon when they rounded a bend and Beatrice saw it. A narrow passage cut through the mountain, barely wide enough for a wagon but definitely passable. Her heart leaped with relief and triumph. "There," she called out, her voice ringing with emotion. "The pass! We found it!" The celebration was subdued, everyone too tired and too worried about conserving energy, but Beatrice could feel the hope radiating from the families behind her. She guided her wagon toward the entrance of the pass, studying it carefully. The walls rose steeply on either side, and the path was strewn with loose rocks that would need to be cleared, but it was definitely their way through. "Samuel, John, Paul," she called to the men. "We need to clear the larger rocks. Everyone else, check your wagons and make sure everything is secured. This passage is going to be tight." The men set to work while Beatrice walked the length of the pass on foot, her hand pressed to her lower back where an ache had been building all day. The passage was about 300 yards long, she estimated, with the walls so close in places that the wagon wheels would have only inches of clearance on either side. But it was doable. They could make it through. She reached the far end of the pass and stopped, her breath catching in her throat. Beyond the passage, the land opened up into a beautiful valley, and there, glittering in the afternoon sun, was the creek Morrison had promised. Water. Sweet, precious water. Beatrice felt her knees go weak with relief. She sank down onto a nearby boulder, tears streaming down her face as the tension of the past 3 days finally broke. They were going to make it. She had led them true. Behind her, she heard the sounds of the men working, their voices echoing off the stone walls. She wiped her eyes and stood, making her way back through the pass to share the good news. "There is water on the other side," she announced. "A good, strong creek. We will go through single file, taking it slow and careful. If we start now, we can have all the wagons through before dark." The passage was every bit as difficult as Beatrice had anticipated. Each wagon had to be guided through with painstaking care, with men walking alongside to make sure the wheels stayed true. Beatrice's wagon went first, with her at the reins, and Samuel walking beside the oxen to guide them. The stone walls seemed to press in from both sides, and the sound of the wheels scraping against rock set her teeth on edge, but they made it through. One by one, the other wagons followed. The Richardson wagon came through without incident. The Davis wagon scraped its side badly but made it. The Peterson wagon got stuck halfway through when a wheel wedged between two rocks, and it took half an hour of careful maneuvering to free it. But by the time the sun was touching the western horizon, all 9 wagons had made it through the pass and into the valley beyond. The families descended on the creek like pilgrims to a shrine, filling buckets and canteens, splashing their faces, letting the children wade in the shallow water. Beatrice knelt at the water's edge and drank deeply, feeling the cool liquid ease her parched throat. The baby kicked vigorously, as if celebrating their success. They made camp near the creek that night, and the mood was jubilant. Someone produced a fiddle, and there was actually some dancing despite their exhaustion. Beatrice sat by the fire, accepting congratulations and thanks from the families, feeling a strange mix of pride and embarrassment. "You saved us," Martha Davis said, pressing Beatrice's hand. "You brought us through when we were lost. We will not forget that." As the celebration continued around her, Beatrice allowed herself to relax for the first time in days. They were not in Helena yet, but they were back on track. According to the map, they should reach the settlement within 2 more days if they made good time. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. Beatrice was jolted awake in the early hours of the morning by shouting. She sat up in her wagon, confused and disoriented, her heart pounding. Outside, she could hear men's voices raised in alarm and the unmistakable sound of horses moving through the camp. She climbed down from the wagon awkwardly, her pregnant belly making her movements clumsy. The camp was in chaos, with people stumbling from their wagons in various states of dress. And there, silhouetted against the dying embers of the fire, were 3 men on horseback. "Everyone stay calm," called out one of the riders, his voice carrying easily over the confusion. "We are not here to hurt anyone. We are looking for a wagon train that was supposed to reach Helena 5 days ago." Beatrice moved closer, studying the riders. They were rough-looking men, dressed in the practical clothing of cowboys, with well-worn hats and gun belts riding low on their hips. But there was something about the leader's voice, a note of genuine concern rather than threat, that made her step forward. "We are the train you are looking for," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Our guide died and we got turned around." "Who are you?" The leader dismounted, and as he moved into the light of the rekindled fire, Beatrice got her first good look at him. He was tall, probably in his mid-20s, with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that curled slightly beneath his hat. His eyes, she noticed, were a striking shade of blue-green, and they were fixed on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Name is Quinn Vaughn," he said, pulling off his hat respectfully. "This here is my brother Jake and our friend Piper. We work the Triple Creek Ranch just outside Helena. When your party did not arrive on schedule, the territorial governor asked some of the local ranchers to send out search parties. We have been looking for you for 3 days. We got lost," Beatrice admitted, feeling her cheeks flush with embarrassment. Our guide died from a snake bite, and I have been trying to follow his maps, but I am not very good at it." Quinn's eyes traveled over her, taking in her pregnant state, and something flickered across his face. Concern. Admiration. Beatrice could not quite read it. "You got them through the pass," he said, and there was definite admiration in his voice now. "Most experienced guides avoid that passage because it is so tricky. You managed to get 9 wagons through without losing anyone or anything." "We scraped up the Peterson wagon pretty badly," Beatrice said. "But yes, everyone made it through." "That is remarkable," Quinn said, and the way he was looking at her made Beatrice's heart do strange things in her chest. "What is your name?" "Beatrice Brennan," she said. "I am a widow. The baby is my late husband's." She was not sure why she felt the need to explain about the baby, but something about the way Quinn was looking at her made her want him to know. He nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving her face. "Well, Miss Beatrice, you can rest easy now. We will guide you the rest of the way to Helena. It is about a day and a half from here, and the road is good. You all did the hard part already." The relief that washed over the camp was palpable. Families clustered around Quinn and his companions, asking questions, expressing their gratitude. Beatrice found herself standing slightly apart, watching Quinn as he patiently answered questions and reassured worried parents. There was a competence about him, a quiet confidence that made people trust him instinctively. He caught her eye across the fire and smiled, and Beatrice felt something shift in her chest. She told herself it was just relief, just gratitude that they had been found. But the way her pulse quickened when he started walking toward her suggested it might be something more complicated. "You should get some rest," Quinn said when he reached her. "You look exhausted." "I am," Beatrice admitted, "but I am also too keyed up to sleep now. I keep thinking about all the things that could have gone wrong." "But they did not," Quinn pointed out. "You kept your head, made smart decisions, and brought everyone through safely. That is what matters." "I was terrified the entire time," Beatrice confessed, surprised by her own honesty. "I kept thinking I was going to lead everyone to their deaths." "Fear and courage are not opposites," Quinn said quietly. "Being brave does not mean you are not scared. It means you do what needs to be done despite being scared. From what I am hearing, you showed real courage these past few days." Beatrice felt tears prick at her eyes again, overwhelmed by the combination of exhaustion, relief, and the unexpected kindness from this stranger. "Thank you," she whispered. Quinn reached out as if to touch her shoulder, then seemed to think better of it and dropped his hand. "Get some sleep, Miss Beatrice. We will start fresh in the morning, and I will personally make sure you get to Helena safely." As Beatrice climbed back into her wagon, she found herself thinking about Quinn Vaughn's blue-green eyes and the way he had looked at her. She placed her hands on her belly, feeling the baby's gentle movements. "Do not get foolish ideas," she whispered to herself. "He is just being kind. You are a pregnant widow with nothing to offer anyone." But as she drifted off to sleep, it was Quinn's face she saw in her mind. The next morning dawned bright and clear, and the camp was transformed by the presence of Quinn and his companions. The mood was lighter, the families moving with renewed energy as they prepared to continue the journey. Beatrice emerged from her wagon to find Quinn already up, checking over the wagons and talking with the men about the condition of their animals. "Morning," he said when he saw her, and there was something in his smile that made her stomach flutter. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in days," Beatrice admitted. "Knowing we are not lost anymore makes a big difference." "I can imagine," Quinn said. He hesitated, then added, "Would you mind if I rode alongside your wagon today? I would like to hear more about how you managed to navigate through that pass." "It is not an easy route even for experienced guides." Beatrice felt her pulse quicken. "I do not mind at all. Though I warn you, it was more luck than skill." "I doubt that," Quinn said. As the wagon train set out, Quinn rode his horse beside Beatrice's wagon, and they fell into easy conversation. He told her about the Triple Creek Ranch, where he and his brother worked as ranch hands and trail guides. He had been in Montana for 5 years, having come west from Ohio to escape the memory of the Civil War that still haunted the eastern states. "I was too young to fight," he explained. "But I grew up watching my older cousins come home broken, or not come home at all. When I turned 18, I just wanted to get as far away from all that sadness as I could. Montana seemed like a good place to start over." "That is why I am coming here too," Beatrice said. "To start over. My husband died in a mine collapse 8 months ago in Colorado. We had debts, and I had nothing left after selling everything to pay them off. This wagon and what is in it is everything I own in the world." "That is rough," Quinn said sympathetically. "Losing your husband and having to start over while carrying a baby. You are stronger than you probably realize." "I do not feel strong," Beatrice admitted. "Most days I just feel scared and overwhelmed." "That is what strength looks like sometimes," Quinn said. "My ma used to say that strength is not about never being afraid. It is about facing your fear and doing what needs to be done anyway." They talked for hours as the wagon train moved steadily toward Helena. Quinn pointed out landmarks and told her stories about the territory, about harsh winters and beautiful summers, about the gold strikes that had built the town and the people who had come seeking fortune. Beatrice found herself laughing at his stories, feeling lighter than she had in months. Around midday, they stopped to rest the animals and eat a quick meal. Quinn helped Beatrice down from the wagon, his hands strong and steady on her waist, and she felt a jolt of awareness at his touch. Their eyes met, and she saw something flicker in his gaze before he quickly looked away. "Thank you," she said softly. "Any time," Quinn replied, and there was a roughness to his voice that had not been there before. As the afternoon wore on, Beatrice became increasingly aware of Quinn's presence beside her wagon. They had fallen into a comfortable silence, but it was charged with something she could not quite name. She found herself stealing glances at him, noting the way he sat his horse with easy grace, the way his hands were sure on the reins, the way the sun caught in his dark hair. She scolded herself mentally. She had no business being attracted to anyone, especially not now when she was about to become a mother. But her heart seemed to have its own ideas, and it picked up speed every time Quinn smiled at her. They made camp that evening at a spot Quinn selected, a small clearing with good grass for the animals and a spring for fresh water. As the families settled in for the night, Quinn came to check on Beatrice. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "That is a long day in a wagon seat, especially in your condition." "I am tired," Beatrice admitted, "and my back aches, but I am all right. Knowing we will reach Helena tomorrow makes it easier." Quinn hesitated, then said, "Would you take a short walk with me? I would like to show you something." "It is not far, and I promise you will be able to make it." Curious, Beatrice agreed. Quinn offered her his arm, and she took it, grateful for the support as they walked away from the camp. He led her up a small rise, and when they reached the top, Beatrice gasped. Spread out below them in the distance was Helena, Montana. The town glowed in the fading light, buildings and streets laid out like a promise of civilization and safety. Beyond the town, the mountains rose in purple majesty against the darkening sky. "There is your new home," Quinn said softly. "You made it, Beatrice. Against all odds, you brought everyone through safely." Beatrice felt tears streaming down her face, but they were tears of relief and joy this time. "I cannot believe we actually made it." "I can," Quinn said. "You are remarkable, Beatrice Brennan. I have known experienced trail guides who would have panicked in your situation, but you kept your head and made smart choices. You saved a lot of lives these past few days." Beatrice turned to look at him, and the expression on his face took her breath away. He was looking at her with such open admiration and something deeper, something that made her heart pound and her mouth go dry. "Quinn," she whispered, not sure what she was asking for. He reached up and gently wiped the tears from her cheeks, his touch infinitely tender. "I know this probably is not the time," he said quietly. "And I know you have been through so much. But I need you to know that I think you are the bravest, strongest, most beautiful woman I have ever met. And if you would allow me, I would very much like to court you properly once you are settled in Helena." Beatrice's breath caught. "I am pregnant with another man's child," she said. "I am a widow with nothing to my name. Why would you want to court me?" "Because in the 2 days I have known you, you have impressed me more than anyone I have ever met," Quinn said simply. "Because when I look at you, I see courage and kindness and strength. Because when you smile, my heart does funny things in my chest. And because I do not care about your circumstances, I care about you." "I do not know what to say," Beatrice whispered. "You do not have to say anything right now," Quinn said. "Just think about it. Once you are settled in Helena, and you have had time to catch your breath, if you would be willing to let me call on you, I would be honored." Beatrice looked up at him, at this man who had appeared out of nowhere like an answer to a prayer she had not known she was praying. Something in her chest loosened, a tight knot of fear and loneliness that had been there for so long she had forgotten what it felt like to be without it. "I would like that," she said softly. "I would like that very much." Quinn's face broke into a smile that was like the sun coming out from behind clouds. "Yeah, yeah," Beatrice confirmed and found herself smiling back. They stood there on the hilltop as the stars began to appear overhead, looking out at Helena and the promise of a new life waiting there. Quinn's hand found hers, and Beatrice laced her fingers through his, feeling something like hope bloom in her chest. They arrived in Helena the next afternoon to a warm welcome. Word of the lost wagon train had spread through the town, and people lined the main street to greet them. The territorial governor himself came out to shake hands with Beatrice and thank her for bringing everyone through safely. "We heard about your ordeal," he said. "The whole town has been worried. You did a remarkable thing, young lady." Beatrice was overwhelmed by the attention, uncomfortable being the center of so much fuss. But Quinn stayed close by her side, his steady presence helping her navigate the sea of strangers. He helped her find temporary lodging at a boarding house run by a kind widow named Mrs. Henderson, who took one look at Beatrice's pregnant belly and immediately took her under her wing. "You will stay here until that baby comes," Mrs. Henderson declared. "And we will figure out what comes next after that. Do not you worry about anything." Over the next few weeks, as Beatrice settled into life in Helena, Quinn was a constant presence. He came by the boarding house every few days, always bringing some small gift, fresh vegetables from a local farm, a book he thought she might enjoy, a rocking chair he had bought from a carpenter specifically for her to use with the baby. They went on proper walks, Quinn always careful to keep things respectable, Mrs. Henderson often chaperoning from a discreet distance. They talked about everything, their pasts, their hopes for the future, their fears and dreams. Beatrice found herself falling for Quinn more deeply with each passing day. "Tell me about your husband," Quinn said one day as they walked along the creek that ran through town. "If you want to, I mean. I do not want to pry." Beatrice was quiet for a moment, thinking about Thomas. "He was a good man in many ways," she said finally. "But he was restless, always chasing the next big opportunity. He worked himself to death in those mines, convinced that the next strike would make us rich. I loved him, but looking back, I am not sure I really knew him. We got married young, and he was always off working, always planning for a future that never came. Do you still love him? Quinn asked quietly. I will always care about his memory, Beatrice said honestly. He was my husband, and he gave me this baby. But no, I do not think I am in love with him anymore. Maybe I never really was, at least not the deep, knowing kind of love. We were both so young, and we thought we knew what we wanted. Quinn nodded, seeming to consider this. And what do you want now? Beatrice stopped walking and turned to face him. I want stability. I want a home where I can raise my child. I want someone I can count on, someone who will be there when things get hard. I want a partner, not just a husband. And do you think you might want that with me? Quinn asked, his blue-green eyes searching her face. Beatrice felt her heart skip a beat. Yes, she whispered. I think I might. Quinn reached out and took both her hands in his. Beatrice, I know it has only been a few weeks. I know you are still getting settled and you have the baby coming soon. But I need you to know that I am falling in love with you. Every time I see you, every time we talk, I fall a little bit more. And I want to be there for you and your baby. I want to be the partner you are looking for. Tears sprang to Beatrice's eyes. I am falling in love with you too, she admitted. I tried not to. I told myself it was too soon, that I had too much to deal with, but my heart would not listen. Quinn stepped closer, one hand coming up to cup her cheek. May I kiss you? He asked softly. Beatrice nodded, not trusting her voice. Quinn leaned down and pressed his lips to hers in a kiss that was gentle and sweet and full of promise. Beatrice felt the world fall away, everything else fading until there was just Quinn and the warmth of his arms and the feeling of finally being home. When they pulled apart, both of them were smiling. I love you, Beatrice Brennan, Quinn said. I love you too, Quinn Vaughn, Beatrice replied. The next few weeks passed in a blur of happiness. Quinn introduced Beatrice to his friends and colleagues at the ranch, and she was welcomed warmly into the community. The other families from the Wagon train had settled into Helena as well, and there was a strong bond between them all, forged in the shared experience of their ordeal and survival. Beatrice was now 8.5 months pregnant, her belly impossibly large, and she found herself more and more uncomfortable as the baby's arrival drew near. But Quinn was endlessly patient and attentive, always ready to help her with whatever she needed. You are going to be a wonderful father, Beatrice told him one evening as they sat on the porch of the boarding house, watching the sun set over the mountains. I hope so, Quinn said. I have never been a father before, so I will be learning as I go. Beatrice looked at him in surprise. You are planning to be a father to my baby, of course, Quinn said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Beatrice, when I said I loved you, I meant all of you. That includes the baby. I know the child is not mine by blood, but if you will let me, I would be honored to raise this baby as my own. Beatrice felt tears streaming down her face for what felt like the 100th time since coming to Helena. You are the most wonderful man I have ever known, she said through her tears. Quinn pulled her close, careful of her belly. And you are the most wonderful woman. We are going to make this work, Beatrice. We are going to build a good life together. 2 weeks later, on a warm September afternoon, Beatrice went into labor. Mrs. Henderson sent word to Quinn immediately, and he arrived at the boarding house in record time, his face pale with worry. She is in good hands, Mrs. Henderson assured him. The midwife is with her now. These things take time, but Beatrice is strong. She will come through this just fine. Quinn paced the parlor for hours, wearing a path in the carpet. From upstairs came occasional sounds that made his heart clench. Beatrice crying out in pain, the murmured voices of the women attending her. He had never felt so helpless in his life. It was nearly midnight when Mrs. Henderson finally came downstairs, her face tired but smiling. "You have a healthy baby boy," she announced, "and Beatrice is doing wonderfully. She is asking for you." Quinn took the stairs 2 at a time. He entered the room cautiously, not sure what to expect. Beatrice was propped up in bed, looking exhausted but radiant, her hair damp with sweat and her face glowing. And in her arms, wrapped in a soft blanket, was a tiny baby with a shock of dark hair and a scrunched-up red face. "Quinn," Beatrice said softly, her eyes shining with tears. "Come meet our son." Quinn approached the bed slowly, his eyes fixed on the baby. When he got close enough, Beatrice shifted the bundle so he could see the baby's face more clearly. The infant was sleeping, his little fists curled near his face, his features perfect and small. "He is beautiful," Quinn whispered, his voice rough with emotion. "Would you like to hold him?" Beatrice asked. With shaking hands, Quinn carefully took the baby from Beatrice. The infant felt impossibly light and fragile in his arms, and Quinn was terrified he would somehow break him. But as he looked down at the sleeping face, something shifted in his chest. A fierce protectiveness rose up in him, a determination to keep this child safe and happy for the rest of his life. "Hello, little one," Quinn said softly. "I am going to be your papa if that is all right with you." The baby yawned and made a small sound, and Quinn felt his heart melt completely. He looked up at Beatrice and saw his own emotions reflected in her eyes. "What are you going to name him?" he asked. "I was thinking Thomas," Beatrice said quietly, "after his father, Thomas Quinn Brennan." Quinn felt tears prick at his eyes. "You would give him my name, if you would like me to," Beatrice said. "It seems fitting somehow." "I would be honored," Quinn said. He carefully handed the baby back to Beatrice, then leaned down to kiss her forehead. "Thank you for letting me be part of this, for letting me love both of you." "Thank you for wanting to," Beatrice replied, reaching up to touch his face. "I never thought I could be this happy again." Quinn stayed with them through the night, dozing in a chair beside the bed, waking every time the baby made a sound. In the morning, Mrs. Henderson brought up breakfast and found all 3 of them sleeping peacefully, Beatrice in the bed with baby Thomas tucked in the crook of her arm, and Quinn in the chair with his hand resting protectively on the baby's blanket. "Well, if that is not a family, I do not know what is," Mrs. Henderson murmured to herself with a smile. Over the next few weeks, Quinn became a fixture at the boarding house, helping Beatrice care for Thomas, learning how to change diapers and soothe a crying baby. He was surprisingly good at it, patient and gentle, and watching him with her son made Beatrice fall even more deeply in love with him. One evening, when Thomas was 3 weeks old and sleeping peacefully in his cradle, Quinn asked Beatrice to take a walk with him. It was a beautiful autumn evening, the air crisp and clean, the mountains painted gold and red with changing leaves. Quinn led her to a quiet spot overlooking the town, the same hilltop where he had shown her Helena on that first night. The town spread out below them, lights beginning to twinkle as evening fell. "Beatrice," Quinn began, then stopped and took a deep breath. "I have been thinking a lot about the future, about what I want and where I see my life going." Beatrice felt her heart begin to race. "And what do you see?" Quinn turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "I see you. I see Thomas. I see us building a life together, a real family. I know we have not been courting for very long, but I am more sure of this than I have ever been of anything in my life." He dropped to one knee and Beatrice gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "Beatrice Brennan, will you marry me?" Quinn asked. "Will you let me be your husband and Thomas's father? Will you build a life with me here in Montana?" Beatrice was crying, tears streaming down her face as she nodded vigorously. "Yes," she managed to say through her tears. "Yes, Quinn, I will marry you. 1,000 times yes." Quinn stood and swept her into his arms, spinning her around as she laughed and cried at the same time. When he set her down, he kissed her deeply, and Beatrice felt like she might burst from happiness. "I do not have a ring yet," Quinn admitted sheepishly. "I wanted to ask you first, make sure you would say yes before I spent the money." "I do not need a ring," Beatrice said. "I just need you." "You are getting a ring anyway," Quinn said firmly. "And a proper wedding with all the families from the Wagon train there. And a house. I have been saving money, and I have enough for a down payment on a small place here in town. It is not much, but it would be ours." "It sounds perfect," Beatrice said, reaching up to touch his face. "Everything sounds perfect." They were married 6 weeks later in a small church in Helena, with all the families from the Wagon train in attendance. Beatrice wore a simple blue dress that Mrs. Henderson had helped her make, and she carried a bouquet of late-season wildflowers. Quinn wore his best suit, his hair slicked back and his face shining with happiness. Martha Davis held baby Thomas during the ceremony, the infant sleeping peacefully through his mother's wedding. When the preacher pronounced Quinn and Beatrice husband and wife, the whole congregation cheered. The kiss that sealed their marriage was sweet and tender and full of promise. The reception was held at the boarding house, with Mrs. Henderson providing food and the families from the Wagon train contributing what they could. Someone produced a fiddle, and there was dancing and laughter. Samuel Richardson gave a toast, his voice thick with emotion as he talked about Beatrice's courage in leading them through the pass and Quinn's steadfastness in finding them. "To Beatrice and Quinn," he said, raising his glass, "may your life together be as blessed as you both have blessed ours." Quinn and Beatrice moved into their new house the next day. It was small, just 3 rooms, but it was clean and sturdy, with a good stove and windows that let in plenty of light. Quinn had already installed a cradle for Thomas in their bedroom, built with his own hands. "Welcome home, Mrs. Vaughn," Quinn said, carrying Beatrice over the threshold while she carried Thomas. "Home," Beatrice repeated, looking around at the simple but cozy space. "I like the sound of that." They settled into married life with surprising ease. Quinn continued working at the Triple Creek Ranch, while Beatrice cared for Thomas and gradually built up a small business taking in sewing and mending from other families in town. Money was tight, but they were happy, their little house filled with love and laughter. Thomas was a happy baby, growing quickly, and Quinn proved to be every bit as devoted a father as Beatrice had known he would be. He would come home from long days at the ranch and immediately reach for his son, talking to him in a soft voice about his day, making the baby gurgle with delight. "You are so good with him," Beatrice said one evening, watching Quinn change Thomas's diaper with practiced ease. "He is easy to be good with," Quinn replied, making a funny face at the baby. "He is perfect, just like his mama." Beatrice came up behind her husband and wrapped her arms around his waist, resting her cheek against his back. "I love you so much," she said. "Sometimes I cannot believe this is really my life." After everything that happened, after losing Thomas's father and being lost in the wilderness, I never thought I could be this happy. Quinn turned in her arms and pulled her close. "You deserve to be happy, Beatrice. You deserve everything good in this world. And I am going to spend the rest of my life making sure you have it." Their first year of marriage passed in a blur of small, perfect moments. They celebrated Thomas's first birthday with a small party, inviting the families from the Wagon train who had become like extended family to them. The baby smashed his fists into a cake that Martha Davis had made, his face covered in frosting, and everyone laughed and took turns holding him. That night, after Thomas was asleep and they were lying in bed together, Quinn wrapped his arms around Beatrice and pulled her close. "I have been thinking," he said softly, "about the future." "What about it?" Beatrice asked, tracing patterns on his chest with her finger. "I would like to have more children with you," Quinn said. "I mean, if you want to. Thomas is wonderful and I love him like he is my own. But I would like to have babies that are ours together, too." Beatrice felt a flutter of excitement in her chest. "I would like that too," she admitted. "I was worried you might not want more children because you already have Thomas." "I want a whole house full of children," Quinn said. "Well, maybe not a whole houseful, but at least a few more. This house will be too small eventually, but I have been saving, and in a few years we can maybe build onto it or find a bigger place." "A few more children sounds perfect," Beatrice said, tilting her head up to kiss him. 8 months later, Beatrice discovered she was pregnant again. Quinn was overjoyed, spinning her around the kitchen despite her protests that she would get dizzy. Thomas, now 18 months old and toddling around getting into everything, seemed confused by his parents' excitement but happy nonetheless. This pregnancy was easier than the first had been, perhaps because Beatrice was not dealing with grief and uncertainty this time. She felt safe and loved, with Quinn doting on her and making sure she did not overwork herself. He took on extra work at the ranch to save money for when the baby came, coming home exhausted but always with a smile for his family. Their daughter was born on a snowy February evening in 1884. The labor was shorter this time, and by the time the midwife arrived, Beatrice had already done most of the work. Quinn held Thomas in the next room, the toddler fussing and asking for mama, while the women worked. When Quinn was finally allowed in, he found Beatrice looking tired but triumphant, a tiny bundle in her arms. "We have a daughter," she said, her voice full of wonder. Quinn approached slowly, Thomas balanced on his hip. The little boy immediately reached for his mother, and Quinn set him on the edge of the bed where he could see but not disturb the baby. "Baby," Thomas said, pointing at his sister. "That is right," Beatrice said. "This is your baby sister." Quinn reached out and gently pulled back the blanket so he could see his daughter's face. She was tiny and perfect, with a dusting of blonde hair and features that looked like a perfect blend of him and Beatrice. "She is beautiful," Quinn said, his voice thick with emotion. "She looks just like you." "I was thinking we could name her Sarah," Beatrice said, "after your mother." Quinn's eyes filled with tears. He had told Beatrice about his mother who had died when he was 16 and how much he missed her. "Are you sure?" he asked. "I am sure," Beatrice said. "Sarah Quinn Vaughn." "Sarah," Quinn repeated, trying out the name. The baby squirmed in Beatrice's arms and opened her eyes, revealing eyes that were the same striking blue-green as her father's. "Hello, Sarah. I am your papa." Thomas leaned forward, poking gently at his sister's hand. "Baby," he said again, this time with more certainty. "You are going to be a wonderful big brother," Beatrice told him, kissing the top of his head. They settled into life as a family of 4 with surprising ease. Thomas was generally a good big brother, though he had his moments of jealousy when Sarah got too much attention. Quinn divided his time between work and family with careful precision, making sure both his children knew they were loved and valued equally. When Sarah was 6 months old, Quinn came home one day with a huge grin on his face. "I have news," he announced. "Good news, I hope," Beatrice said, bouncing Sarah on her hip while Thomas played with wooden blocks on the floor. "The best news," Quinn said. "The ranch foreman is retiring, and they have offered me his position. It comes with a significant raise in pay and a house on the ranch property, a real house, Beatrice, with 4 bedrooms and a big kitchen and a porch that overlooks the mountains." Beatrice's eyes went wide. "Quinn, that is wonderful. When do you start?" 2 months, Quinn said. "Which gives us time to get everything ready. I know you have roots here in town, but I promise you will love the ranch. There are other families with children, and it is close enough that we can still come into Helena whenever you want to visit your friends. If you are there, then I will love it, Beatrice said simply. You are my home, Quinn, you and the children. Where we live does not matter as long as we are together. Quinn crossed the room and wrapped his arms around his wife and baby daughter. Thomas, not wanting to be left out, toddled over and hugged Quinn's leg. They stood there, all four of them, a perfect little unit. The move to the ranch was chaotic but exciting. The house was even better than Quinn had described, with big windows that let in lots of light and enough space for the children to run around. There was a barn where Quinn kept his horse, and a chicken coop that Beatrice immediately claimed as her domain, excited about having fresh eggs every day. Life on the ranch was different from life in town, but Beatrice adapted quickly. She made friends with the other ranch wives, who welcomed her warmly. Thomas loved having so much space to explore, and Sarah thrived in the clean mountain air. The years passed in a happy blur. Thomas grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved helping his father with ranch work. Sarah was bright and energetic, always getting into mischief and making everyone laugh. In 1886, Beatrice gave birth to another son whom they named Daniel. 2 years after that, another daughter arrived whom they named Grace. Their house was full of noise and laughter, with children running in and out, always some adventure or crisis happening. Beatrice sometimes felt overwhelmed by the chaos, but Quinn was always there to help, to take over when she needed a break, to remind her that they were a team. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Quinn surprised Beatrice with a trip into Helena, arranging for one of the other ranch wives to watch the children for the night. They stayed at a nice hotel and had dinner at the best restaurant in town, and Beatrice felt like she was courting again, young and carefree. "I cannot believe it has been 10 years, she said over dessert. "It feels like we just met yesterday, but also like we have been together forever." "I know what you mean," Quinn said, reaching across the table to take her hand. "Best 10 years of my life. Even with all the chaos and the sleepless nights and the worries, I would not trade a single moment." "Do you ever think about that day you found us?" Beatrice asked. "When we were lost, and I had just led everyone through the pass." "I think about it all the time," Quinn admitted. "I remember seeing you for the first time, this pregnant woman who had somehow managed to navigate through one of the trickiest passes in the territory. I remember thinking you were the bravest person I had ever met. And then I got to know you, and I realized you were also the kindest and smartest and most beautiful. I fell in love with you so fast, Beatrice. It should have been terrifying, but it just felt right." "I fell in love with you just as fast," Beatrice said. "I tried not to. I told myself I had too much on my plate, that it was too soon after Thomas's father died. But you were just so good, Quinn, so steady and kind and patient. You made me feel safe for the first time in a very long time." Quinn stood and came around the table, pulling Beatrice to her feet and into his arms. "Dance with me," he said, even though there was no music. Beatrice laughed but wrapped her arms around his neck, swaying with him in the middle of the restaurant. Other diners smiled at them, this couple so obviously in love. "I love you, Beatrice Vaughn," Quinn said softly. "More today than the day I married you, and I will love you even more tomorrow." "I love you too," Beatrice replied. "Thank you for finding me that day. Thank you for seeing me, really seeing me when I felt invisible. Thank you for loving not just me but Thomas too, for making him yours in every way that matters." "He is ours," Quinn said, "just like all our children are ours. We made this family together, Beatrice, you and me." They spent the night at the hotel, talking and laughing and remembering, reconnecting as just Quinn and Beatrice instead of Mama and Papa. It was wonderful, but Beatrice found herself missing the children by morning, eager to get back to the ranch and the beautiful chaos of their life. The children greeted them with hugs and stories of everything that had happened in their absence. Thomas, now 12, had helped fix a fence. Sarah, 10, had baked cookies with Mrs. Patterson from next door. Daniel, 6, had caught a frog. Grace, 4, had drawn a picture of the family that was now proudly displayed on the kitchen wall. "Looks like you all managed just fine without us," Quinn said, ruffling Daniel's hair. "But we missed you," Sarah said, hugging her mother tight. "It is not the same when you are gone." "We missed you too, sweetheart," Beatrice said. "But it is nice to know you can handle things on your own when you need to." That summer, the Richardson family came to visit, along with several other families from the original Wagon train. They had a big celebration at the ranch, with everyone bringing food and the children running wild. It was like a reunion, and they spent hours reminiscing about that terrifying journey and marveling at how far they had all come. "I still cannot believe you led us through that pass," Samuel Richardson said to Beatrice, shaking his head. "I was sure we were all going to die out there." "I was sure of the same thing," Beatrice admitted. "I was terrified every moment. But you did not let us see that," Martha said. "You stayed calm and made smart decisions. You saved us all, Beatrice." "And then Quinn found us and saved me," Beatrice said, smiling at her husband across the yard where he was playing horseshoes with the men. "The two of you are a perfect match," Martha said. "It is like it was meant to be. Like God sent Quinn to find you at exactly the right moment." Beatrice thought about that later, as she and Quinn sat on their porch watching the sun set over the mountains. The children were inside getting ready for bed, their voices drifting out through the open windows. "Do you think it was meant to be?" she asked Quinn. "Us finding each other?" Quinn considered the question seriously. "I do not know if I believe in fate exactly," he said. "But I do think sometimes things work out the way they are supposed to. You needed help and I was able to give it. We needed each other and we found each other. Maybe that was fate or maybe it was just luck. Either way, I am grateful for every moment." "Me too," Beatrice said, resting her head on his shoulder. The years continued to pass, each one bringing new joys and challenges. Thomas grew into a fine young man, eventually taking a job as a ranch hand at a neighboring spread. Sarah became a teacher at the local school, her bright mind and patience making her beloved by her students. Daniel showed a talent for working with horses, and Quinn taught him everything he knew. Grace, the baby of the family, was artistic and dreamy, always drawing or writing stories. Quinn rose through the ranks at the ranch, eventually becoming the full manager, overseeing all operations. Beatrice became known throughout the territory for her quilting, her beautiful pieces sought after by families all over Montana. They built a comfortable life, not wealthy but secure, with a house full of love and a future full of promise. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Quinn had a surprise for Beatrice. He took her to the top of the hill overlooking Helena, the same spot where he had proposed so many years ago. "I have been thinking," he said as they stood looking out over the valley, "about how far we have come. About that lost wagon train and the scared pregnant woman who led everyone to safety. About the cowboy who went looking for them and found his whole world on the other side of that pass." Beatrice smiled, tears pricking at her eyes. "That seems like a lifetime ago." "It was a lifetime ago," Quinn said. "We were different people then. Younger, more scared, less sure of ourselves. But somehow, against all odds, we found each other, and we built this incredible life together." He pulled out a small box and opened it to reveal a beautiful gold ring set with a small but perfect diamond. "I never did get you a proper engagement ring," he said. "I was too poor and too worried about practical things, but I have been saving for years, and I wanted to give you this. As a reminder that I love you as much today as I did 20 years ago. More even, because now I know all the ways you are wonderful. Beatrice was crying openly now as Quinn slipped the ring onto her finger. It is beautiful, she whispered. But Quinn, you did not need to spend money on this. I know I did not need to, Quinn said. But I wanted to. You deserve beautiful things, Beatrice. You deserve everything good in this world. Beatrice threw her arms around her husband, holding him tight. I already have everything good, she said. I have you. I have our children. I have this life we built together. That is more than I ever dreamed I could have. They stood there holding each other as the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. Below them, Helena spread out like a promise kept, and beyond it, the mountains stood eternal and strong. Do you ever think about what would have happened if things had gone differently? Beatrice asked. If Morrison had not died, if we had not gotten lost, if you had not been the one sent to find us. Sometimes, Quinn admitted. But then I stop myself, because I cannot imagine my life without you. I cannot imagine not having Thomas and Sarah and Daniel and Grace. This is my life, Beatrice. You are my life, and I would not change a single thing. Not even the hard parts, Beatrice asked. The times when money was tight, or when the children were sick, or when we fought about silly things. Not even those, Quinn said firmly. Because all of it, every moment, has brought us here. To this place where we are happy and healthy and surrounded by love. That is worth everything we went through to get here. As they walked back down the hill to where their wagon waited, Beatrice thought about the journey that had brought them together. She thought about the terrified widow who had led a wagon train through a mountain pass, not knowing if she was leading them to safety or to their deaths. She thought about the brave cowboy who had ridden out to find them, expecting to find disaster and instead finding his future. "Thank you," she said softly to Quinn as he helped her up into the wagon. "For what?" he asked. "For finding me," Beatrice said. "For seeing something worth loving in a scared pregnant widow. For choosing me and Thomas and the life we could build together. For being exactly the man I needed, exactly when I needed you." Quinn climbed up beside her and took her hand. "Thank you for letting yourself be found," he replied. "Thank you for being brave enough to love again after you lost so much. Thank you for making me a father and a husband and giving me a purpose beyond just existing. You saved me just as much as I saved you, Beatrice. Maybe more." They drove home through the gathering darkness, their hands clasped together, the ring on Beatrice's finger catching the moonlight. When they arrived at the ranch, the house was glowing with lamplight, and through the windows they could see their children gathered in the parlor, probably playing games or reading together. "Look at what we made," Quinn said softly, gesturing to the scene. "Look at this family, this life." "We did that, Beatrice. Together." "Together," Beatrice repeated, and the word felt like a promise and a celebration all at once. The years that followed were peaceful and full. Thomas married a nice girl from town and gave them their first grandchild, a baby boy they named Quinn after his grandfather. Sarah eventually married one of her fellow teachers, and they moved to Billings where he had taken a position at a larger school. Daniel took over more and more of Quinn's duties at the ranch, preparing to eventually take his father's place. Grace went to art school in San Francisco, her talent finally getting the recognition it deserved. Quinn and Beatrice grew older together, their hair turning gray, their steps slowing but their love for each other never wavering. They celebrated every anniversary, every birthday, every small victory, and weathered every setback as a team. When Quinn turned 50, the ranch threw him a big party. Everyone who worked there came, along with what felt like half the territory. There were speeches and toasts, stories about Quinn's leadership and fairness, his wisdom and his kindness. But the toast that meant the most came from Thomas, their oldest, who stood up with tears in his eyes. "Most of you know that Quinn Vaughn is not my blood father," he began. "My father died before I was born, but Quinn has been my papa in every way that matters since I was just a few weeks old. He chose to love me, chose to raise me, chose to be my father when he had no obligation to do so. And because of that choice, I grew up knowing what it means to be a good man. What it means to keep your promises, to work hard, to love your family with everything you have. Papa, you made me who I am today, and I am grateful for you every single day." There was not a dry eye in the room by the time Thomas finished. Quinn pulled his son into a tight hug, both of them holding on like they would never let go. "I am the one who is grateful," Quinn said when he could speak. "You made me a father, Thomas. You taught me what it meant to love someone unconditionally. You were my first lesson in being the man I wanted to be." Beatrice watched from across the room, her heart so full she thought it might burst. She thought about that scared young woman who had led a wagon train through a mountain pass, pregnant and alone and terrified. She thought about how far she had come, how much she had grown, how rich her life had become. Martha Davis, now well into her 70s, came to stand beside Beatrice. "You did well," she said, nodding toward the celebration. "Look at this family you built, Beatrice. Look at these people who love you and love each other. You did that." "We did that," Beatrice corrected gently. "Quinn and I together. I could not have done any of it without him." "That is what a good marriage is," Martha said wisely. "Two people who make each other better, who build something together that neither could build alone. You two have that, Beatrice. Not everyone does, but you two have it in spades." As the party wound down and the guests departed, Quinn and Beatrice found themselves alone on their porch, watching the stars come out over the mountains. Quinn's arm was around Beatrice's shoulders, and she was tucked against his side, their bodies fitting together perfectly after so many years. "Can you believe we have been together for almost 30 years?" Beatrice asked softly. "Some days it feels like forever," Quinn said, "and some days it feels like we just met. But every day I wake up grateful that I get to spend it with you." "I feel the same way," Beatrice said. "Even after all this time, I still get a little flutter in my chest when I see you. Still feel like the luckiest woman in the world because you chose me." "I am the lucky one," Quinn argued gently. "I got to love you, to build a life with you, to be a father to your children, and then to have more children with you. I got to watch you become this incredible woman, strong and wise and kind. How am I not the lucky one in this equation?" "Maybe we are both lucky," Beatrice conceded. "Maybe that is how this works. We both won when we found each other." Quinn pulled her closer and pressed a kiss to her temple. "I will accept that compromise," he said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds of the ranch, the distant call of an owl, the rustle of wind through the trees. Inside the house, the lamps were being extinguished one by one as the remaining family members went to bed. "You ever miss it?" Quinn asked suddenly. "The excitement of those early days, the adventure." Beatrice considered the question carefully. "No," she said finally. "I mean, I am glad it happened. If we had not gotten lost, if you had not come looking for us, we might never have met. But I do not miss being lost and scared and not knowing if we would survive. I much prefer the quiet, peaceful life we have built. The knowledge that we are safe and loved and surrounded by people who care about us. That is the real adventure, Quinn, building this life together. That is more exciting to me than any wagon train journey could ever be." "Good answer," Quinn said, and she could hear the contentment in his voice. More years passed, bringing more grandchildren, more celebrations, more quiet moments of joy. Quinn eventually retired from his position at the ranch, though he still helped out when needed. Beatrice continued her quilting, now making blankets for each new grandchild, each one a work of art and a labor of love. They took trips sometimes, going to visit Sarah in Billings or Grace in San Francisco. But they always came home to the ranch, to Montana, to the mountains that had witnessed their love story from the beginning. On their 40th wedding anniversary, their children threw them a surprise party, gathering everyone from all over the territory. There were dozens of people, including some of the now elderly members of that original wagon train, all coming to celebrate Quinn and Beatrice's enduring love. 40 years, Samuel Richardson said in his toast, his voice wavering with age but still strong. 40 years since Quinn found our lost wagon train and Beatrice safe on the other side of that pass. 40 years since these two people who needed each other found each other. 40 years of love and partnership and building a beautiful life together. That is something to celebrate. The room erupted in cheers and applause. Quinn stood and helped Beatrice to her feet, and they moved to the center of the room. Someone started playing a waltz, and Quinn swept Beatrice into his arms, dancing with her just like they had on their wedding day 4 decades earlier. "Still got the moves," Beatrice teased gently. "For you, always," Quinn replied. As they danced, Beatrice looked around the room at all the faces, young and old, family and friends, people whose lives had been touched by their story. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, about the widow with nothing who had found everything, about the cowboy who had been looking for a lost wagon train and found his destiny instead. "What are you thinking about?" Quinn asked, noting the faraway look in her eyes. "I am thinking about how grateful I am," Beatrice said. "For all of it. The hard parts and the easy parts, the scary moments and the joyful ones. All of it brought me here to this moment, dancing with you, surrounded by everyone we love. I am thinking about how that terrified woman who led a wagon train through a mountain pass could never have imagined this life, could never have dreamed she would be this happy. That terrified woman was extraordinary," Quinn said. "She just did not know it yet. I knew it from the moment I saw her. I saw her strength and her courage and her goodness. I saw the woman she was and the woman she would become. And I knew I wanted to spend the rest of my life with her." "And you did," Beatrice said softly. "You spent it with me. All these years, through everything, you stayed. You loved me and our children and the life we built. You kept every promise you ever made to me, Quinn Vaughn. Every single one. That is because you made those promises easy to keep," Quinn replied. "Loving you has been the easiest thing I have ever done, Beatrice. Everything else in my life has been hard at one point or another, but loving you, that has always been effortless." The song ended, and their children came to embrace them, grandchildren clustering around their legs, everyone wanting to be part of this moment. Beatrice looked at Quinn over the heads of their family, and they shared a smile that held 40 years of love and understanding. As the party continued late into the night, Quinn and Beatrice eventually slipped away to their favorite spot on the porch. The stars were brilliant overhead, the mountains dark shapes against the night sky. "You remember what I said to you that first night?" Quinn asked. "When I showed you Helena from the hilltop." "You said I made it," Beatrice replied. "That against all odds I brought everyone through safely." "And you have continued to make it every day since," Quinn said. "Every challenge we faced, every obstacle that came our way, you met it with grace and strength. You are still that brave woman who led a wagon train through a mountain pass, Beatrice. You are still saving people, starting with me." Beatrice turned to face her husband, this man who had been her partner, her love, her best friend for 4 decades. She saw the lines age had carved in his face, the silver in his hair that had once been dark brown, the slight stoop to his shoulders that years of hard work had created. And she thought he had never been more handsome. "We saved each other," she said firmly. "That is what you have never quite understood, Quinn. You think you saved me when you found that wagon train, but I was still lost even after we reached Helena. I was still adrift, still scared, still unsure of where I belonged or who I was supposed to be. You gave me a home, Quinn. Not just the physical houses we have lived in, but a home in your heart. You made me belong somewhere. That is what saved me." Quinn pulled her into his arms, and they stood there holding each other under the Montana stars, just as they had so many times over the years. Around them, the ranch was quiet, their family safe inside, the mountains standing eternal watch over them all. "I love you, Beatrice Vaughn," Quinn said. "I have loved you for 40 years, and I will love you for 40 more if we are lucky enough to have them." "I love you too," Beatrice replied. "Today, tomorrow, and every day after that. You are my heart, Quinn. You always have been." They stayed there until the stars began to fade with the approach of dawn. Two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful together. A lost wagon train, a mountain pass, a cowboy sent to search for survivors, and a pregnant widow trying to save her people. These were the unlikely ingredients that had created one of the great love stories of the Montana Territory. Years later, long after Quinn and Beatrice had passed away peacefully in their sleep within days of each other, their great-grandchildren would ask to hear the story. Thomas, now an old man himself, would tell them about his mother's courage, about how she had led 9 families through a treacherous mountain pass when all seemed lost. He would tell them about Quinn, the cowboy who found them safe on the other side and fell in love with a pregnant widow. "It was love at first sight," Thomas would say. "Grandpa Quinn always said he knew from the moment he saw Grandma Beatrice that she was the one. And Grandma would laugh and say she fell in love with him the moment he smiled at her by that campfire." They spent 47 years together, and every single day of those years, they chose each other. That is what real love looks like, children. It is not just a feeling. It is a choice you make every day to stand beside someone, to build something together, to weather whatever storms come your way as a team. The great-grandchildren would listen with wide eyes, captivated by this story of adventure and romance and enduring love. And they would carry that story forward, passing it down through generations, a testament to the power of courage and love, and two people who found each other exactly when they needed each other most. The ranch that Quinn and Beatrice had called home for so many years would remain in the family for generations, a place where their descendants would gather, where their love story would be remembered and celebrated. And sometimes, on clear nights when the stars were particularly bright, those who stood on the porch would swear they could feel the presence of Quinn and Beatrice, still there, still watching over the family they had created, still together, even in death as they had been in life. It was a love story for the ages, born in the wild heart of Montana in 1882, when a pregnant woman led a lost wagon train through a treacherous mountain pass, and a cowboy found them safe on the other side. It was a story of courage and faith, of second chances and new beginnings, of two broken people who came together and made each other whole. It was, in the end, a story about the power of love to transform lives, to create families, to build legacies that would endure long after the original lovers had passed from this world. And in Helena, Montana, where it all began, people still told the story of Beatrice and Quinn, of the widow and the cowboy, of the lost wagon train and the love that blossomed from desperation and became something beautiful and lasting. It became part of the fabric of the territory, woven into its history, A reminder that even in the harshest places, even in the most difficult circumstances, love could take root and flourish. The mountains that had witnessed their first meeting stood eternal and unchanging, but the love story that had unfolded in their shadow changed countless lives, inspired countless hearts, and proved that sometimes, when all seems lost, salvation comes in the most unexpected forms, whether that is a narrow pass through the mountains or a cowboy with kind eyes and a brave heart, riding out of the darkness to light the way home.